Hey everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, another log becomes a bonsai pot. Hey everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. In the sense that I have a branch that splits into two shoots in here, so I'm probably going to cut this thing off right about here this fall. I've taken my knob cutter and I've gotten rid of some of that. So I just put them on the bottom, growing upwards into the bag. We fill it with trees and then we water as we need to. We're trying to get rid of those air pockets. Up at the cabin again this year. No, it was last year. I think it's been sitting in the garage all winter long. I found this real twisted trunk of a tree from the cabin, very hard oak. I think it's an oak tree. And I thought, hey, that's got some cool curve to it here. And I could display, instead of a bonsai on a slab, I have that other log I've done some stuff with. This has it's a bigger log. I can make a little carved out section in here, drill a couple of drain holes, and kind of like on a slab of some kind of rock, I can have a bonsai on kind of a log slab, if you will. So I'm digging it out. As you can see, I've already gotten a little start to it, just taking a trusty old hammer and screwdriver and getting rid of some of the log so we can have a little bit of a depression for those roots to grow. So I'm going to keep working. Just like that. Slow but sure. I've been attacking the log here for a few minutes now. Definitely got a nice little concave going there. It's gonna sit kind of something like this eventually. And again, I've never done a slab planting yet, but the slabs are generally flat and everything kind of mounds up over it. So I don't care if it's necessarily that deep. I just want to be able to fit one or possibly two trees on here, 3 max, so the roots have a little bit room to grow. And the reason why most slabs are probably a little bit wider than this log as well, maybe out to here and out to here, and so all the roots are here. So I'm a little bit more limited in my roots. And of course, we're always looking for that radial root pattern. I wouldn't want it to be having not a lot of growth this direction, but a lot of growth this direction. So we'll keep plugging away for a few more minutes on this, and then I'm going to drill a couple of drain holes, and that'll be the inside portion. And then we'll tackle smoothing this all out. We're going to make this super smooth and sand it all down and give it, of course, a nice coat of some stain or varnish to protect it. But we still have some more digging out to do. So back at it. I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing here. It's just enough of an incline, a concave area to let some of those roots expand a little bit. But now we don't want to have water sitting right here in this lowest part. So now we got to drill our drill holes, or our drain holes, and I'm going to have about 4 of them in there at the lowest possible points. So there we go. Hole number 1. So we can have proper drainage and not get this log rotting out in just a year. Of course, we'll coat it with something as well. Let's get hole number 2 in here. So there we go. We got 4 nice drain holes at the lowest points of the log. So this will sit and drain properly. Now, to get some sandpaper and go to town on that. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of heavy sandpaper, but this side is already smooth enough where my fine sandpaper is going to do a fine job of getting it where I need to be. So, we'll smooth it all out. It's really hot and humid today, so I am really sweating working out here in the garage. I need some air movement. I filed down some of the edges so we don't worry about slivers down the road. And I had my fine sandpaper doing a nice job here on the wood. This part here will be real pretty with the stain on. I had to be careful not to sand too much because it's the softer wood. This is all harder, more intact. That'll be super pretty. It's smooth enough. Now you have to make sure that we have something to stain it with. I don't know that I have that, so I'll have to go and visit the store and pick something up to put a coat on here. I'll probably put a coat on the whole log. I'll just stain the whole entire thing, and then I'll use some of my rubber Flex Seal in here for this bottom coat, and so all the bonsai soil will sit on that. But we'll go out and get some protection for the wood, and we'll slap that on. I'll have to take a break while I go shopping. There is a bit of good news. I have some sealant with me. This is the Sequoia color, Sequoia red. I wasn't thinking I was going to put as much red on this log, but I think it'll look kind of nice. Plus I have it around. And if there's one thing to be said about Dave's Bonsai, is I do try to have bonsai on a budget. So I have the materials, I'm going to go ahead and use them. So we have some wood stain and sealer just to make sure it's waterproof and doesn't just completely rot out in a couple of years. So we're going to go ahead and generously lather that on. It'll bring out some of the highlights of the log and then protect it. This stuff is a bit messy to work with. It drips around a lot. I'm using a recycled cooler that I've just been using for soil sometimes. Reducing, reusing, and I don't want to put this back into the earth right now because that just wouldn't be good. So instead, we're using it as a bench. So we're going to get a good coat of this on to protect the wood from the elements. It'll be sitting outside with some trees on there in due time. One of the questions that you need to ask yourself when you're working on something like this, I mean, I'm always looking out for something different and unique in the bonsai world, making things on the cheap. And yes, I'm going to buy some more expensive pots down the road. I have a couple now. I have me some lovely Sarah Rayner pots. But I like to display my trees, and I like to have unique ways to display my trees in my garden. And part of my garden is full of old stumps from the cabin, and this is another old stump from the cabin that we can incorporate into the display of the bonsai. So again, I'm lathering up both sides to protect the entire log, and then on this inside layer here I'm going to go ahead and put the Flex Seal so we have that rubber coating on, and then the trees will sit on that. And I've had no problems with my trees with Flex Seal on the bottom with my other projects that I've worked on. I'll also be able to drip down some of this stain in the crack here, so all these holes for the drain holes are completely sealed off as well. We want to make sure that there's no chance for the rotting to happen in the first couple of years. And this will be out in the elements, so it'll get abused, and that's okay. So there we have the first layer. I'm going to leave the inside alone, but I was just going to rub this off and take a peek at it. So as you can see with the Sequoia red, I got some nice little red highlight here, and this dark stuff wasn't really going to turn colors all that much, just get a little bit darker. So I like that. Got a nice rich. We have to decide if the trees now will go on this side. If I tilt it a little bit this way, which I could with a couple of legs on here, or it would sit this way. And I do like this swerve down here, but it's not as pretty of a log. So we can decide that later. We can either let this sit right there and the trees go on there, or we could turn it this way. And if I just put this rag right here underneath there, and it sits like that, then we have this swooping curve here as well. Maybe just like that. We have a low part and then a high part. Then you can see some of the color of that. Either way, it's protected from the elements. We'll see how the trees look in it at a different time. Right now, no. They need to sit here. This needs to sit here and dry up. So I will flip it over. And we will let it dry. So while the stain is doing some drying, which will take a while on a humid day, why don't we do a quick update for this episode? About 3-4 weeks ago, I had the chance to go up to the bogs of northern Minnesota and get a couple of these larch. And as you can see, we still have green on the larch. This one's looking really, really healthy. Really shooting out those needles very well. That's the healthiest one right there. And these two, they're still green. They're sparse to begin with. They're still seeming to be alive. This one right here has the most damage looking on it. As you can tell, we got some brown tips and some discoloration there. So there's some greener spots on the back. It's still getting moisture. It's getting part sun, part shade. They seem to be doing well. That's 4. That's 5 of the 9. Let's go check out the other ones. So I have 2 on my deck. I have them in a couple different locations in the yard, just to see sun conditions, which one gets a little bit more sun, a little less sun, and doing a little test. This one also has some nice shoots that are still growing out, some new shoots or longer shoots since I put them in here, same as this one. So I got 2 on the deck that are in the wooden box, and they seem to be doing fine as well. So back in the corner of my yard, I have kind of the area that gets a lot of shade in the first part of the day and the end of the day with just a little of midday sun. And I put all my plants, I've got some cuttings over there trying to do some root growing. I've got a big tall barberry that's hanging on. After a really tough transplant, it's still hanging on. A couple more barberries that I may have showed you before on the left there. But then there, on the right side there, are the 2 last larches. And as you can see, right here, the growth on this one, we've got a good inch growth since I brought it back. So these 2 sitting over here are really liking the sun exposure and the shade exposure. And of course, I've been watering them every day faithfully, especially with all this heat. So there's a quick update on the larches. They're doing good. So the stains had a little chance to dry for a couple of days, and now we're going to put on a coat of poly. I'll probably put on more than 1 coat, but this is going to give it a nice shine and another layer of protection from the weather. This is something that I'll put on real nice and thick. And the bottom is the most important part. We want to make sure that that's nice and securely finished. It's going to give us some nice shine and character in the color differentiations, but it's also going to protect it from the elements. I always make sure to squeeze a little extra in the drainage holes so it goes and protects that inside as well, just to keep this log lasting a lot longer than just a year. The last time I did this with a log, right now I have nothing in the planting pot, the homemade pot, but it still looks good, holding some of its shine. It's in good shape. Okay, so there we have coat number 1. I'll let this one dry up real good. Really soaks into these end sides. And then after it's dry, go ahead and give it another light sanding, and we'll put in coat number 2, so it's really good thick poly coat on here. So that's going to ward off the rain for several years and keep it looking shiny and bright. Picture of an old log that used to be. I'm just dabbing the underside right now just to get the edge. I will flip it over and do parts of the inside. But as I mentioned earlier, the inside is going to have that Flex Seal on it, so I don't have to put too much of this coat on it really. The Flex Seal will do all the protection on the inside coat. Plus there's already a coat of stain on there. So I have it suspended on a log. It's just going to be able to sit here now and dry up. So while this is drying up, let me see if I can poke around the bonsai gardens and the stands and see what updates, things I can show you on this hot July day while we wait for this to dry. So it is a beautiful day in July, albeit just a little bit hot. And I have some bonsai trees on my bench in my garden, and I have bonsai trees on my porch on the railings. So one of the things I just wanted to remind people, a couple episodes ago I talked about sphagnum moss and putting sphagnum moss on the surface. So you can see this tri-variegated leaf ficus does not have any sphagnum moss protection down below, and look at how thin the pot is as compared to that deeper pot right there with the juniper in it. Neither one has protection, but in this heat, even though it's very humid, I have to check this tree pretty much first of all my trees to see how dry it is. Because with the sun and the heat and the shallowness of that tray, that one's going to dry out the fastest without any sphagnum moss protecting it. So in Minnesota, when it gets this hot, we are watering our trees minimum once a day, oftentimes twice. I water typically in the morning and in the evening. Give these things a chance to cool off. So without any sphagnum moss down there, I'm gonna have to go in there and touch that soil, kind of see where things are at, and dig down a little bit. And I watered just a few hours ago, and of course that top layer is already pretty dry, but we'll have to give that one water a little bit later on. So the importance of that sphagnum moss is really to retain some moisture in the middle of a summer, especially if you can't get to your trees really quickly or regularly and get them watered. So now this guy has a little bit of moss on the bottom. Not sphagnum moss, but some moss that I've put on from before. And when you go in to touch this guy, there's still a little bit of moisture left in there, and that's going to protect this one a little bit longer. Another shallow pop though, I'm going to have to watch this one closely. It's a watermelon seed ficus from a cutting from a couple years ago. Got kind of a nice big gnarly trunk there with multiple main branches there. So that one is going to have to be watched closely too because of its shallowness, even though it does have some moss on there. So my Christmas cactus is doing very, very well since the last little trim. It's got all kinds of little shoots up there. You see those little shoots that are kind of reddish in color? They're looking kind of nice. Now this one I also don't have sphagnum moss on, and it's sitting in the beautiful sunshine all day long, and it's loving life right now. It's going to be super thick by this fall with hopefully a lot of shoots. And being that is a Christmas cactus, you know, if I didn't water this one twice a day, I probably would be okay. But I'm always watching the trees and always checking it out. And this one I still am watering once a day for sure, and this one's loving life up on the deck railing. So it's a good thing I'm checking my trees today in the middle of the day. Sometimes this Sadzuki kind of separated from some of my other trees. I've walked past it and not watered a couple of times. And as I'm doing a couple of updates for you on the sphagnum moss trees that are protected, I noticed this one was a little bit dry. I might have missed this one this morning. So I'm digging the soil just a little bit, double check, and I'll probably cool this one off a little bit. So if I have to check my trees, my finger isn't going to work with most bonsai soil. I won't get down very far. So sometimes I can just go in here with a chopstick. And I'm going all the way down to the bottom here. And it's dry. Time to put some water in this guy. So got myself some pond water. And I can go ahead and give this thing a nice water. No need to bring out the hose for one plant. Always got my recycled juice bottles filled with pond water. Give this thing a nice drink. Now one thing to keep in mind when you're watering your plants on super hot days, your bonsai trees to be specific, we've talked about in the past, I've talked about in the past, you have to be careful when you water trees that you don't water up on the canopy. Water's going to go around and drip down, and we oftentimes want to water underneath and make sure that water is getting into all those root areas. And then of course when it's super hot in the summer, if you got a full sun plant that you don't have shade protection from, if you go with the big hose and squirt this whole thing and everything, then you're gonna have water droplets sticking on all these leaves, and then you're gonna have the possible chance of leaf burn. You're just gonna burn your leaves really bad, possibly that way. So get in there tight, get that hose in there and water the tree underneath the canopy. And then if you can, I'm gonna move this guy in the shade pretty soon because he's been in the sun too much already today. So I'll get him in one of my shadier spots and give him some protection during this long stretch of heat. It is predicted in Minnesota that we're gonna have highs in the upper 80s and lower 90s for 2 straight weeks. So gotta start considering where to put some of these trees during the heat of the afternoon. But definitely be careful with watering. Water a couple times a day to keep them cool. And make sure that you're not just spraying the canopy like crazy. You might get some of that sunburn on your leaves. That water, just like if you're swimming out in a lake or a beach or a pool, you know, in the summertime, we fry as well. The reflection from that water and soaking up all those rays is gonna burn your leaves. So make sure you take care. So I've got some trees up on the railings on my deck. Gonna have to watch those. Make sure that these aren't completely burnt out in the sun. We'll keep an eye on these guys. And then my bench down there, which looks like a forest from back here. I got several benches. I got the 3 benches, lower, higher, and then the one on the left. Some of those trees, if they're needing a little rest, I can put them back there behind that sitting bench, back by the Japanese maple back there, to the right of the bird feeder. Hard to see with those orange lilies, but right in the middle of those orange lilies, back there is a nice little shade area that will get some sun later in the afternoon, but only a little bit, and then it'll be in the shade again. So I can put some trees back there in that nice shaded area. So again, having places to put them is always a good thing. Welcome back, everyone. The poly is all dry. A click for you, a day or so for me, and it's looking really good. So now the inside, I'm going to put that Flex Seal on. Now I don't want to put the Flex Seal all the way to the edges because I want it to look a little bit more natural than having this big black spot here on the edges. So I got some of the shine from the poly when I dabbed underneath, about a ½ an inch in or so. I'm just going to put some tape. I'm going to tape this up right here with some paper towels so I can just spray the Flex Seal right in there and not get it on anything else that I don't want it on. So let's get that tape on and get that Flex Seal on. So I've secured the paper towels around the log, and now the flex seal will just be right in the middle where I want it. Giving the flex seal a good shake, and here we go. Works just like a spray paint. And just like spray paint, I don't want to get too thick in any one spot right off the bat. I will put 2 layers on here. So there's layer number 1. Now the other thing I'll do for layer number 2 is I will put little drain meshes in here so the bonsai saw doesn't fall through. I'll put some meshes over the 4 holes, and then I'll get those kind of rubbered in on the edges. I won't cover, of course, the holes, but I'll get the meshes so they're permanently in there, and then I won't have to worry about putting any wires or anything. So in those 4 hole areas, I will have some wire mesh, and actually I could probably put some in there right now while it's wet. So let me see if I could grab some. So looking around my bonsai stuff, I was able to find my black pre-cut meshes, and so I can put those right in there, kind of curve it to the shape of the log. And then I can go ahead and spray a little bit around more on the outside. And now the meshes are all tapped into a little bit of that rubber. I could put a rock on here to maybe hold it down a little bit heavier. So I went outside real quick to grab a rock, and I'll just put that right on that one so it forces it down a little bit. And that one's pretty good too. Let's get a rock for that one as well. Here we go. That'll hold it down a little bit better. Put this one on this one. And I'll put this here. There. So those rocks will hold it in place a little bit better, and then when I get my second coat on there, that'll hold everything nice and tight. So we got to let this dry. We can't put another coat on for several hours. So for you it'll be a click, for me it'll be several hours. All right, we'll catch up in a bit. As you can see, the flex seal has done its job. I have all my meshes in there, securely in there, with some of the flex seal rubber sealant, but it's still, you can see holes all the way through, so the drain holes will be drained. Now, I like the way this turned out for the color, but the log naturally fits better this way. It shows the nice slab. But I like this side better with that. I want to see a little bit of that. So I have a little piece of wood here that if I just make a little perch back here, I can find the right pitch that I like. If I stand back and take a peek at that, then now I can see more of the tree. And from the camera angle, it's a little bit higher. You won't be able to get as true of a look, but wherever I find that magic look, then I'll be able to put that piece of log right there. And so when I plant my trees, I'll put that under there for the look. So then I had to come up with some trees. So looking through my plant room on top of the fish tank with some of the young tropicals that have been transplanted on top of the fish tank, they're too small. This is a big chunky slab of wood. So I need something with a little bit more substance. And none of the trees in my collection were anything I'd want to put in this pot at the moment, except I thought, well, what about all the weeping willows that I have in nursery pots from cuttings? So I have about 6 or 7 of these guys, and I figured let's just put 3 of them on here and try it. I'm doing a lot of experimentation with willows, and I know willow trees will have a tendency to hang when they get older, and the big long hanging willow trees hang, but in a bonsai, a lot of times those branches will start to bend back up if you don't wire them down to make that weep look. but I'm still working with them, trying them. I've got a couple that are doing some weeping here as these branches get super long. So these are a couple-year-old cuttings that have been in this nursery pots for a couple of years. So we're going to take those out of the pot and we'll find out kind of what threesome pattern I like on here. I think we'll just put 3 on and just give it a whirl. So I've had my willow trees in just the dirt around my house, some potting soil dirt. I've had them in, I have 2 bonsai trees where they're in bonsai soil. And the biggest thing about these weeping willows is they of course like a lot of water. So as long as you're watering them regularly, you're gonna see some results. A lot of people don't like weeping willows around their house because it sucks up all the moisture from all the other surrounding plants and things. So sometimes people complain about that willow tree. So in the bonsai world, outside of the fact that I might have to work to make them weep down the road, I really just have to focus on making sure that in these hot summer days that you're keeping it watered. Now, I have some water here by me to keep the roots moist. It's a very humid day in Minnesota again. We've had a lot of heat, but it's been very humid. And though I would rather transplant this guy in the spring with most of my other trees, we're gonna give it a go and do it now. Just make sure that these don't have any chance of drying out. I will not cut too many roots, hopefully, so we won't stress the tree out too much. And if it's one thing again that I've learned about willows, is they seem to bounce back. One of my willow trees, which I'll have to go grab and show you my willow, I'll show them both to you eventually here, but one of them, a rabbit or a squirrel, nubbed down to 1 inch a year ago or so. And so it's still in its pot and it's slowly growing still. So they seem to bounce back regardless what you do to them. So I'm hoping for the same with my late repotting here, much later than I would typically like. But it looks like I have a decent bit of roots in here. And this is, remember, from a cutting from a couple of years ago. So all the roots that you're seeing has grown in the last couple of years in this pot. Now I definitely, of course, will cut these long ones out. But I have a nice, decent radial pattern here. I got some flaring up there, and there. So it's moving out to the sides the way we like it. As long as I get kind of a flat surface to go on this log, I'll be feeling pretty good. So I'm just gonna stop right there with that one. Grab the next one right away. So I have the trees, 1, 2, 3. I cut off all that real long stuff. Now I'm just gonna put the pot up here, my slab, and lay my trees down on there. You know, all right. And then in order for me to get a feel for it, I got to put my stick back here and prop up my pot. And I didn't, no particular order, I just grabbed these 3 trees from the bench here. And let's take it back and take a look. All right, very interesting. All right. So these are still a little bit puffy for this. But remember, it's supposed to be on a kind of like on a slate or this log here, which, you know, it's going to defy the typical pot restrictions of having pots cover up here. I'm going to have to mound some dirt in here, and then I'll put some sphagnum moss in there. But I still want to get these a little flatter. So I'm going to make sure I can do that. Step back and take a look at that. Yeah, they're going to be hiding much more now under some of that soil. All right. Okay, so I have my trees pretty much ready. Now, the problem with the tree, I've gotten my 4 drain holes, but I don't have any smaller holes to secure the trees in there, and they're going to need to be secured for sure, especially on a flatter surface or any kind of slate. You got to have them secured or they're just going to blow away with the wind. They're not going to be in deep soil. So, but I do have 4 drain holes, so I can put 2 wires through here, 2 wires through here, 2 wires here, 2 wires there, pop them up, and they should be able to connect the trees pretty well from drain hole to drain hole. So I'm gonna get some wire and we'll start doing that. We'll go through the bottom on the right side. There we go. And then I'm gonna go through the bottom right side over here. So I got 2 tie downs right there. Now tree placement. All right. So that's going to be the front. This tree seems to be my most sturdy. Put that one right in the front center. This one has some nice movement on this one. And I like it over here because of the branch on this left side. And this one has a really low branch. There's a scar right there. It's healing over nicely, but the branch goes to the right, so I could keep this one here. But the tree tends to go to the right. If I twist it a little bit, you can see all the movement of the tree if I do this. And then that branch goes back here, which again, this back branch, I might just end up having to cut off anyway, and this would be the first primary branches up here. This one is the lowest on this tree, this is the lowest on this tree, so this is really awkward, but yet it fills out the picture. I could always wire things over here. So there's my first look at the tree as a possible planting. Let me step back and take a look. So it looks like everything goes this way. This one, and then this one straight up center. So this I got to do something with. I got to maybe angle it more like this with some rocks under there, so it doesn't look so much curving that way. How about that? Yep. And this one, perhaps I can twist a little bit more. This one should be in the front more, so maybe I can put that in the back a little bit more. Do that. The other possibility is to turn this one around this way. I don't like that front as much as that one right now. And this could be cut back to let this become the primary branch. This could be a better center tree with all that movement on there, and this could be over on this side going that way. That looks a little better. And this main tree up front has all this nice growth. Now remember, these are willows, so these will grow all together, get sloppy here, but I would want willows to be hanging down all over the place. So maybe we'll do that. Let's step back and look at that one. Yeah, I like that better. Just gonna have the thinnest of layers of bonsai soil on the bottom. And we're gonna mush this down in there, right? Then I've got the wires that I have plenty of. I think I'm just going to go this one over to this one and twist it up back here. Okay, make sure it's where I want it to be. Oh, I don't have it twisted the right way. All right, now it's got some movement up here in the front over here. All right, so now I can cut off that extra and give it a couple of spins. A little bit thicker wire than I probably needed. I should have gone down one lower, but the tree won't move anywhere. So the first one is on. So what I'm going to do is cut a few of the roots off right here towards the front. so they're not right on the edge. And we'll add some rock and sphagnum moss over that. So tree number 1, okay? Tree number 2, we said we wanted it at an angle a little bit more, kind of like this. All right. At first glance, it looks all right. Again, unlike a slab, this is a pretty thin area to work with. So we don't have as much. So we're going to go ahead and fill it with soil. And I won't be able to do much chopsticking because there's not a lot of room down there for anything to fall into. We have some in the back here. We have some between the tree. There you go. Some in the back here. And again, we're going to have a lot of spillage at first until all this gets some sphagnum moss on it. And then what will happen with the trees on the slab, the roots can't go down very far, so as it starts to get some roots down there, the whole thing starts to shimmy up just a little bit. All right, so I have a little exposed root right there. And a little exposed root right there, which sphagnum moss is going to help me in a moment, because this lava rock's just not going to stay in place. There we go. And I can put some bigger rocks on here to hold some sphagnum moss and rocks in place, some bonsai soil. So let's give it a good watering, see how that settles things. Looks like the water's draining through the drain holes. Let's see. There it comes, draining through the drain holes. Let's get my stick in there for the angle we want. And we have willow trees going out of an oak tree. Go get some sphagnum moss and see what we can do with that. I have leftover sphagnum moss from my trip up to northern Minnesota when I got my tamarack trees. So I have all bits and pieces of the sphagnum moss. And I'm going to go ahead and just pick out of here. I want to pick out the big pieces. So the breakdown of this sphagnum moss will also provide a little bit of nutrients for the trees as well. This organic material that's not in the soil, but over time may break down a little bit and provide some of that nutrients as well. So let me clean this up a little bit and we'll get a final shot. So before I do the reveal, here's the willow I was talking about before. Right in here is where it was chopped off. Squirrel or rabbit came right up on my porch and chopped this guy off right here, not even an inch off the bottom where the rock soil starts. And so this is the next year or two, and I've got this long weeping willow branch here. I've got these 3 up top here that will start to weep eventually. But I could cut this thing right down here and make this a cascade right here and make this the main branch. It could even cascade. So we'll just keep it growing. And you notice with a lot of willows, you can put a tray down here. And this is water in here from the rain this morning, still at the bottom. And on a warm day, this is just going to suck up on into the roots here. The roots are going to find this water. And my fellow YouTuber Nigel Saunders up there in Canada, he has some trays under his, and he would lift his up and you would see this big old ring of roots just bursting out of the drain holes. So there's the tree that the rabbit got right there. And yeah, it's still alive, and we'll see what happens over the next couple of years. So the next one I'm showing you here, I've never shown this to anybody yet except for those who have come to my house. And I'm not a potter in any sense of the word. I think I'm a better bonsai enthusiast than potter. But I got this stuff online to make kind of a cement style pot, a homemade big old mangled pot. Because when I think of a weeping willow, I always think of a weeping willow out on a peninsula or a point on a lake. And this big old tree that just swoops down and the branches hang all over down by the water. A lot of places in where I live and where I've seen over the course of my life, I've seen that. So here is my weeping willow that's in my homemade pot. I recently went up to the North Shore and got all these black slates to fix this. These have some of them have fallen and busted, so all of these are loose right now. I'm just putting them around to kind of see if I build up this slate wall here, just kind of what it'll look like. But if you cannot see, inside here is a little moat. The water, if the pot is flat on a surface, the water is in the little moat here. That dries up pretty fast in the summer months, but I like to keep some water in there. And every once in a while I see birds in here, and it's pretty cool. So I got this big rock up here, like the river comes from right underneath here and flows through and around. So this is my weeping willow on my homemade pot. And I got a branch here that's 3 feet long back here. Just weeping, weeping, weeping all by itself. Now, if you'll notice on this trunk, this branch was the leader and it's getting awfully thick, and this one's not getting much thicker. So I'm gonna have to cut this one down a little bit, or cut the branches down here so this doesn't get super fat, so we have reverse taper. So I have some things to do on this tree, but I just wanted to give you a show of my other weeping willow that's seemingly doing nice with my homemade Peninsula pot. So there you have that. And here you go, everyone. The reveal, the final shot of my 3 weeping willows now in my log slab. Nice and moist. The trees are in there. And, you know, something different. I'm always out looking for something that's a little bit different. There's the back view. If I ever wanted to see it from the other side, not terribly terrible either. But I do like this side better with this extra texture of color. And if I tilt it just right with my back support, which I will secure later, there we have it. So we'll see how this trifecta of weeping willows does over the course of the next few years. So that's all I got for you for Dave's Bonsai. Well, of course, I'm Dave, and if you like this, make sure you say so, and tell all your friends about Dave's Bonsai, and we'll catch you on the next one. Hey everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. In the sense that I have a branch that splits into 2 shoots in here, so I'm probably going to cut this thing off right about here this fall. I've taken my knob cutter and I've gotten rid of some of that. So I just put them on the bottom, growing upwards into the bag. We fill it up with trees and then we water as we need to. Try to get rid of those air pockets.